Good day. Today we have Dr. Pamela Denise Long. How you doing, sister? How you doing?
I'm doing good, Blacklogic. How are you?
I am excellent. So I'm happy to have you on. And right off the back, we want to get to know just a little bit more about you. So if you can tell us about your upbringing, your background, your educational attainment, and how did you become a Republican running for the Senate in Illinois?
Yeah. So again, thanks for having me on. I always enjoy our conversations. My goodness, I am a native Mississippian. I grew up in the Mississippi Delta, Shelby, Mississippi, born in Mound Bayou. Mound Bayou was a freedman town. So it was a town started by freed slaves. It was one of the most developed towns in northwestern Mississippi. They had a hospital, a community center. I think there was just a video talking about how at one point 100% of students who graduated at, grade and age appropriate level for reading and writing and all that kind of stuff. And I grew up in the middle of a cotton field that my family used to own. It was bequeathed to us by an Irish dude who fell in love with a sister and bequeathed all the brothers' property. And I'm a mom of one, and I got a dog plus the grand puppy that I sit, which everybody hears when I'm doing interviews because they get jealous about me having conversations with other people. We grew up poor. We had a 4-room, 10-roof shack. One heater that worked anyway in the front room, no indoor plumbing. We had an outhouse in the back. We never owned a car when I lived in Mississippi, although when I lived in Kankakee, Illinois, from about 5 to 14, the person I was living with had a car there. I'm a kid's kid. I'm a child of the 80s. I grew up running around making, mud pies, which we didn't eat, of course, but just like pretending to cook and all that kind of stuff. And playing in the bayous of Mississippi, just, resilience and learning how to be social. My grandmother did not have a high school education. She was born in 1920s Mississippi, and I lost both of my parents before I turned 3. My dad died my dad died when I was 2 weeks old, and then my mother died a week before I turned 3. So my maternal grandmother raised me and my sister, who's 5 years older than I. And she always said education is the way. So we took it seriously, and education after higher education, I should say, it was just a rite of passage. So I got my bachelor's in occupational therapy from Mizzou. I went to college in Chicago for a couple of years, had a great time. Also got an associate's degree in Illinois. I studied at NYU for a while for a master's in.
You went to Lewis and Clark in Mississippi, correct?
Lewis and Clark is in Godfrey, Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's across from St. Louis. Went to NYU for a while. 9/11 happened, came home, graduated from a university in Texas with my master's in educational psychology. And then my doctorate is in organizational development. So I'm a nerd when it comes to systems design, intervention design, and then the implementation of that so that it's effective, and then evaluation to monitor impacts. So that's kind of what I do for my business as well, is strategic planning, program evaluation. I write, of course, being a writer for Newsweek. So people commission me to write white papers and other things like that. I'm
sorry, you said they commissioned you to write white papers?
White papers, yeah. So
but no black papers. I'm just kidding.
No, but you know what? I love the idea. So let's make that happen. Let's have some equity in the thing. So I'm running for U.S. Senate because our nation is off the chain right now. There are things that are happening with immigration, with lack of accountability for officials at all levels of government in ways our federal infrastructure and state, all of it is captured. I think people have lost the plot about how we're really a government that's supposed to be ensuring the freedom and liberties of the people. There are people who are scared of the government. That should tell you right there that we've gotten it wrong. So I could go on and on, but I'm running to bring some competence back to this work. I have a 30-year career around the things that we'll be regulating, from healthcare to pre-K through 12 education, higher education, nonprofits, business, and of course my work in media. So I want to apply whatever gifts, talents, and abilities I've acquired to, implementing the Constitution so that this generation and our grandchildren's children inherit a nation that makes sense, since we've bled and died for it.
So quick question, because you stated the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Now, in my opinion, the Constitution is not a perfect document, but if you had the opportunity to, let's say, reconstruct, revamp, or even add an amendment to the Constitution, would you do it, or would you keep it as if and then continue to follow the laws and amendments that are already exist?
Yeah. So one of it's a document created by people almost 250 years ago, but it's a pretty damn good document. If folks who didn't have the benefit of the internet or encyclopedias and dictionaries and whatnot spent some good amount of intellectual capital constructing a country that did pretty well, and then reconstructing it that did far, far better, right? I know a lot of people would like to see a constitutional amendment to impose mandatory term limits. I understand that because people feel that folks stay too long, career politicians versus
like the Supreme Court.
Like the Supreme Court, right? And so I understand the call for that. My concern, particularly about mandatory term limits for Congress, is that the elite buy elections. And it's happening in my race as well, where the person who is getting endorsed from some folks has literally said on a mic, I donate to a lot of people and I anticipate a lot of endorsements. That's not good governance, is where you buy influence. But so my concern is that with mandatory term limits, it cuts both ways. You will lose a good representative just because their time is up. And this system, the elite people who know how to buy stuff and move money are going to install their person. They'll just wait the good person out. So I don't want to tie the hands of the people by imposing mandatory term limits, because we aren't even equipped right now, the regular people, to actually control this system. So that would be my concern. I would admonish the people to get busy getting involved with the politics. If you can't see another candidate, right, if what's on the table isn't working for you, then become the thing that you want to see. So that's the one thing I would consider. I would not support, and I couldn't have any control over it for the U.S. Senate per se, except for messaging, but I would not support an Article 5. And with an Article 5 convention of the states, that would be the states demanding an amendment. They could proffer any number of amendments. There are no rules that you could end up with 12 different amendments, right? Theoretically speaking. Whereas through the congressional route for an amendment, which is how all of our other amendments have been ratified, it's one topic at a time. And there's more control. I just think we're too divided right now to do a Article 5 convention well. I hope that makes sense. What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, in regards to making amendments and making, reconstructing.
And the Article 5 in particular.
I guess my stance would be faceless voting. I thought of this, even though it's not possible in, today's society, is that you will not know how your candidate actually looks. You won't know their race. You won't know their religion. The only thing that you would know are their policies. So you will have either policy one, and all the policies that candidate put forth, policy 2 or ABC, however they want to number it, how they want to, divide the different candidates by giving, a nomenclature or some sort of a number and letter. And that what you will vote on. And under, let's say A1, that's one candidate, or B1, that's another candidate, or C1. And it doesn't matter if they're independent, Republican, Democrat. We won't make A's Democrat. We won't make B's Republican or C's independent. It would just be a mixed bag. That will make the people more informative to go and read their policies, or they'll just throw a couple of dice and, pick one or whatever. But the point is to get out of fear-based voting, to get out being influential by using, like you were stating, millions of donor dollars to promote this one candidate. It will be solely based on the policies. And so people won't be blinded versus like when Obama was introducing the Affordable Health Care Act. So when they put the label Obamacare on it, oh, we don't like that. Obamacare is bad. What's bad about it? Oh, well, there's a lot of taxes in it. They just came up with all sorts of silly things. But when someone stated, hey, what are your thoughts on Affordable Health Care Act versus Obamacare? Oh, Affordable Health Care Act, that's really good. So they had all of these things surrounding just the labeling of things. So what if we took away faces? What if we took away names, so to speak? And those candidates, kind of like your social security number, right? It's a sensitive number that is identifying towards you. You only give it to certain, entities for your identification. So what if it was similar to that? What are your thoughts on that?
I find it intriguing for several reasons. One, it communicates how biased we are as a society, that the idea of it sounds good. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
We were like, yeah, that might.
I know it's not possible.
No, but just thinking that, man, that will solve some problems. That we have these problems in 2026 is it shows that there's some failure in civic duty that we had as a nation. I also think that most people right now roll the dice. Most people aren't truly engaged. This campaign has taught me that many people ask their friends who they should vote for. They believe the most titillating rumor. They don't fact check. I have been pleased with Twitter and Grok, I think is how you say it, the AI on Twitter, that one of the leaders of a county party told me that people were like fact checking some things about me and were liking that the things were being debunked. Like some people get triggered by the fact that, I've gone on the record as saying that people who have been harmed should be repaired regardless of their race, and there are no exceptions. And them understanding what that means in terms of, when I talk about lineage and whatnot, and how they're essentially fighting for lineage-based investment as well, right? The people
Absolutely.
who built this nation, right? Everybody's fighting for lineage right now, for real. White folks, all of us. That's so intriguing. I'm gonna have to reflect on that a little bit more. I like the idea of it. I don't know how we would implement it, but I think it's important. And here's the other thing, right? I also think we need to stop saying that people are too busy to do the work that needs to be done. Look, our nation, I'm gonna say this. Our nation is screwed right now because we haven't done the work. We've elected folk and then we just went on about our business. The reality is that and it ain't even us who's electing people. We voted, but the people who get folks elected are their donors. Donors have presented the people to you that they want to have elected. And donors are generally rich people who have business interests and other interests that elected officials will be making decisions on. So you are doing the voting, but your options have been chosen for you. We're not donating in large numbers, except like Donald Trump and stuff like that. But think how much big donors gave to Trump for him to even win his campaign. So we are responsible. We, the people, are responsible for the fact that our government is out of control, and it's out of our control.
I thought about how certain candidates under this, again, nomenclature, or however they hide their identity, would be promoted to the people. How will the people know the policies? Would they have to go to a website? No. The most things that we already know that Americans do mostly is watch television. And so if you're watching television, would it be one on your streaming apps that you didn't pay to get rid of the ads, and you'll have some sort of candidate, vote this person. They like, I approve this message. No, it would just be a 30-second, ad commercial, and each of the candidates would donate the same amount of money to promote themselves. There will be no different. Oh, I got $1 million. I got 500,000, so I can be on multiple networks. No, $10,000 each network in order for, that candidate who may be A1 or B3, whatever, again, nomenclature they may be. And under your nomenclature would just be your policies. So someone's watching their favorite show, comes to a commercial. Now, some people mostly get up, but it was only like a 30-second, like, oh, I'm gonna miss my show. So they have to stand there and look at the screen. They're like, wait a minute. So he's doing this, that A1. When I go and vote, I'm voting for C5. Something on, like there would be equality even when it comes to voting, not based upon special interests, NGOs, secret investors that will be giving you hundreds of millions of dollars so you can be everywhere, every time, every commercial. Because some people you see more so than others. So that person is already in your subconscious mind, like, yeah. And this other person you saw once or twice, and they had these, I forgot what they call them. I think you're probably more privy to what they call them when these hit campaigns where they talk negatively about another candidate. Yeah. So again, if you think about equality and even how people go about viewing the candidates, because there's no equality there. Whoever likes you the most, whoever you are the puppet for the most, you'll get more coverage, you'll get more money.
Yeah, and when I love the idea of capping the amount that can be donated and spent. So if you get in-kind donation from one of your friends for news media coverage, that needs to be counted toward the cap, right? All of that stuff. I do like that. I think what that gets us back to is who's truly most qualified, competent, and really resonates with the people.
That's the point.
And I think
now sorry, go ahead.
Now, there should be a requirement that all candidates get to be on the same station so that the same viewers get to hear them. I think this is something that needs to be taken up. I don't know that it requires a constitutional amendment to do it. It would require federal and state and local collaboration, since states implement elections and all of that kind of stuff. But I think it's worth doing.
Oh, definitely. It'll be equal across the board. You know, take, for instance, James Clyburn does a fish fry every year.
Right.
You know, each candidate will be afforded one social event to meet their constituents in a public setting, right? It won't be because I had the most money, I can do multiple and I can give out free fish and fries. No, if that's what you want to do, maybe this guy's going to do snow cones, okay? But it would be one or two social events during your campaign in order to socialize and bump elbows with people who you're trying to convince to vote for you. That's it. And that would be a cap on the amount of money you can spend there. Everything will be capped. Everything will be equality, because at the end of the day, the reason why people vote for one candidate or another, because they can make another candidate look bad, or they're more in your face than the other candidate because of the money.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
So I do want to go to one of the major headlines today in reference to immigration.
Okay.
And I've heard you use terms immigration moderation. If possible, can you define immigration moderation in operational terms? And what are your three measurable outcomes? Like, for instance, border flow reduction, asylum case processing time, interior enforcement priorities, et cetera.
Yeah, no, such a nuanced question. Thank you for that. So immigration moderation just being to turn down the spigot on what we currently have. And for me, that means both legal and illegal immigration. So what it looks like today after the Biden administration is, and this is a pretty hard-lined one or a far-right one, I think we need an actual moratorium right now on immigration. We need to stop letting people into a dynamic, ever-changing situation. We need to spend the next year or two getting a handle on who is here, who has to leave, when, where, and how. And that's for legal and illegal immigration. So that's one. A metric for me would be a stop. And currently we're not seeing that. We're seeing a push to let in more legal immigrants. And we're also seeing, even from Republicans, a push for amnesty. I'm completely against amnesty. So that would be number two. It would also be a key metric for me is tying native born or current American, right, labor sourcing, employment to the decreases. So looking at the ways in which one goes down, dependence on legal and illegal immigration, and if and how the Americans and approved workers who are currently here, their numbers go up, and across what industries. I personally think we have to monitor that better than we have been. And right now, I think we've taken a sort of laissez-faire approach to looking at what happens with the labor numbers for the people who are authorized workers in the U.S. and how immigration affects it. So I think that would be three things for me. And of course, I got to add to that, E-Verify with some enhancements. One, people steal identities. So E-Verify is only as good as the documents presented. We can't necessarily expect employers to be document experts when the I-9 documents come in. However, Social Security is quite well aware of when your information is being used in multiple locations. And so we need to enhance some of Social Security's and DHS's obligations to report to Social Security, the person who owns the Social Security number, if their information is being used. And I do think we need to have some accountability for employers. So I'd like to see more enforcement. I won't call them raids, but on-site reviews at employers. So I think there's like 5 things that I would like to see.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of portray what an American may ask when it pertains to ICE, especially, you know, the stereotypical, well, who's going to pick the fruit? And what about those business owners on the border? Most of those are Republicans, and they're the same one trying to grant amnesty. So Americans ain't going to go out there and pick the fruit. I mean, even though they're not paying them minimum wage or $12 or $15 an hour, which they should be paid. When if that happens, then the fruit price is going to go up. What do you say to Americans in those regards?
So there are some ways I think we need to facilitate mechanization. If we can't eat fruit unless we exploit an illegal worker and pay them less than minimum wage, then we need to look at mechanization and some other things to get around that. I can't stomach the idea that we need to abuse workers in order to have services. The same for the people who are like, who's going to clean our toilets? They're like, that's so strange to me. I think that I'm not an advocate for unionization of illegal aliens. I don't think that they should have such benefits to be shoehorned into unions. So people will say, well, unionize them so that they have the right to advocate for, you know, fair wages, so to speak, and all of that kind of stuff. We're rewarding illegal immigration, the thwarting, the breaking of our laws. Like literally, it's a crime to cross the border illegally. And so yeah, that's my response to that, is to mechanize it if we can't get it done without abusing workers. And first of all, why is anybody out in the field in the sun from sun up till sundown? That's very inhumane.
Slavish.
Right, inhumane for sure. So let's look at how we structure the work, both for humans and or is it time for machines to get into it?
Yeah, that goes into a whole nother line of questioning. I'm not going to even touch the machine thing just yet.
Okay.
I do want to touch on abolishing ICE. What is your possible reform, if any, alternative that actually reduces the abuse risk without collapsing enforcement and their capacity, you know, at the current capacity?
Yeah, we're not abolishing immigration and customs enforcement. They do interior enforcement in collaboration with, you know, Customs and Border Patrol, who has authority and jurisdiction over that 100-mile zone, which I think some 75% of the American population lives within a 100-mile zone from an exterior land or water border. I think those mechanisms for accountability already exist. We need to hire people with solid standards, train those people to standards for use of force and interactions with civilians, be they illegal aliens or visitors or citizens. And we need to hold people accountable when they deviate from the standards of interaction and that includes every level in the chain of command. So that includes the executive secretaries who thumb their nose at due process and humanity. It includes also the illegal aliens. You have to get out of our nation. I'm sorry. When you aren't here authorized, and certainly if you have an order of deportation or you're a criminal alien, you have to go. We can do that aggressively without harming people. And when I say aggressive, what I mean is commitment to the mission of getting it done with the least trauma to people as possible, right? But there are going to be people who resist, people who hide, but we have to make sure that we are not turning off the public because of how we're doing mass deportations. And there do need to be mass deportations because there are mass numbers of people here.
Absolutely. Should ICE be required by law to use body cameras in enforcement operations? Now, if yes, what are the rules for activation, retention, public release, and penalties for noncompliance? And if no, explain why immigration enforcement should be exempt from modern transparency standards.
Yeah, I don't know that it should be exempt. And that's an interesting conversation about ICE and border, or, well, both really, I suppose, because they're both law enforcement. I think that's a good idea. I think it protects the agents. I think it also creates a sense of security somewhat for civilians as well as others. There is no exemption. I think that there is a high standard for folks who have been given the authority to inflict bodily harm, including the absolute, right, the ultimate use of force, which is to take a life. I think absent that sort of transparency and accountability, we lose the public will, the narrative about how diligent we're being, that we're causing the least harm to people. Does that answer surprise you?
No, not at all. I think that the people need to be more informed instead of radicalized through their emotions and supporting people who are legally in the country. But there needs to be a great level of transparency when it comes to ICE. Should they cover their face? I've reeled with this one back and forth only because the nature of people they'll be dealing with like cartel members from MS-13. And these people will sort out and find by your face, because of all the technology we have today, find out where you live. They'll find a crack in the system somewhere. So not that I'm nay or yay on it. I'm just indifferent about it. I don't know if they should show their face or not, just given the level of the people and the characters they'll be dealing with.
I have been consistent on this one. And the answer is that you should not be in law enforcement with your face covered.
Okay. I'm glad I'm indifferent.
Well, so we have already seen some replications of people with their face covered snatching folks up. Human trafficking is a real thing. And we can't have an unmarked vehicle face covered, kind of like, who are these people coming to grab folks off the street? I do think that we need to augment our technology and our going after folks who are targeting law enforcement in that way, particularly organized crime in an organized fashion.
I can get on board with that. Now, deport only violent criminal aliens. And I know that sounds simple until Congress has to define violent. So what's your definition? Convictions only, charges, or intelligent indicators? Like, do you include domestic violence, sex offenses, robbery, firearm offenses, repeat DUI? Because when I think about a violent criminal, right, usually it's bodily harm or destruction of property. Now, if they destroyed the gate coming inside the border, is that violent? Like, what is your definition regarding they only now want to deport only violent criminal aliens? At first, Trump was going after people who were legally in the country. And that, even though initially he was going to deport, violent immigrants, then it went to, let's just find immigrants who are legally in the country. Now they went back down to, I believe, forgot his proper title, but I know his last name is Holman. He's now taking it over. And now he's now concentrating only with violent, immigrants who are illegally in the country. Yeah.
Tom Homan. That was his original plan anyway, was violent, illegal aliens, criminal, I think is how you said it. Criminal, illegal aliens.
Even though they're criminal when they come inside the country illegally, but I digress.
And that's what I've been saying as well. They're all criminal aliens, right? If they have not demanded asylum or requested asylum in the proper way, including a port of entry. You just answered it. Anyone who came into our country against immigration laws, not at a port of entry, is a criminal, illegal alien. And then with the violence, all the things that you said, I think if you destroyed federally funded property in order to break into the nation, like the folks who were cutting the border wall, you need to go as well. I think we do have to triage, though, where we start. I think violent criminal aliens is a good place to start. I think any criminal alien with a any alien with a deportation order, meaning we told them you got to leave and they just stayed for the next 10 years. Any violence, including that which you've committed anywhere in the United States. And if we find out somehow that you're here and there's violence you committed in your home country, we should escalate that you have to go. But there has to be a measure of due process for all of them. And I do believe, in as much as we're able to, we should facilitate all of them leaving. And I think any sign of weakness that we're going to do an amnesty is going to bring more people here, because Reagan did that amnesty in 1986. He secured on paper, so to speak, provisions to prevent another amnesty, but here we are. So no one's enforcing the law. I think if Tom Homan wants to go after only violent criminal aliens, however he defines that, like let's assume the most extreme cases of violence, then we need to really up our on-site work enforcement authorization. I'll call it a rate. It's not really a rate, but sort of is. We need to up those assessments. We need to up the vetting process for people getting hired to really cut off the jobs magnet that brings people here in the first place. If you can't find and keep a job, you're not going to come to the United States unless you're intent, once again, on making your ends meet by doing criminal activity, in which case we got to expeditiously get you up out of here.
That's a great response. But in regards to that, how do you prevent a violent only deportation policy from becoming a magnet for organized nonviolent crime? Like, take, for instance, you're partial towards enforcement dealing with identity fraud, trafficking facilitation, repeat reentry, gang logistics, and everything surrounds that, criminal network, and large scale theft rings.
How do you prevent it? So I think it's a prioritization. You don't ignore one or the other. And I think you can't send 100% of your human capital resource toward just that. You have to be doing multiple things at once. I think if we think of it in terms of percentages, and this is going to be oversimplified just for the sake of example, if, 50% of human resource goes towards violent criminal aliens and their deportation. The rest of it is distributed thinking about the ways in which we need to have choke points that cut off the employment magnet, first of all. So I'd say the next 30% needs to go to the work site enforcement raids and handling that kind of thing. And then I think you might see where people aren't wanting to come here illegally in the first place because they can't make it. The whole point is to come here to make money, to send it back to the countries which seem to depend on them, wiring money back home. So taxing those things and or even preventing, then you're probably preventing the what's the word? I can't think of it at the moment. My brain is so tired, but preventing them from sending the money back home. Then you're going to see people flying with it, putting it in cars. So there are ways that we really need to be strategic about cutting off that magnet of coming to the United States and getting paid under the table for work done here.
I know what I'm about to say is going to
remittances. That's the word, remittances.
I know what I'm about to say is going to be harsh to some people, but I thought about how we have that border and there's a lot of businesses that are built right there on the border with illegal immigrants, and how they usually go after the illegal immigrants versus the business owner who is employing them. You never hear about, a farm owner or ranch owner being incarcerated because they have, 20 to 100, or a lot of those manufacturing, they're dealing with meat and other produce and things of that nature being incarcerated. I just wonder if they would be incarcerated and that processing facility, that farm is then auctioned to someone who's going to take control of it. The government gives some sort of subsidies or incentives to hire Americans, because again, we have a high level of unemployment in America that's not really being reported, in my opinion. And they keep saying that Americans won't do these jobs because we're starting to look like Europe, in my opinion, where we become a welfare country, right? Everybody is living off the government and the welfare programs they're in. Like, if you're not, elderly, living off, a set, retirement a budget or whatever,
Mhm.
or you don't have any, ailments that prevent you from working, we should be putting Americans back to work. And we have all sorts of industries they can go into that are non-technological to a certain degree. And a lot of, in my opinion, just based upon my research, people getting employed by the border in these manufacturing, processing, and farms are maybe getting paid, I don't know, anywhere from $3 to $7 an hour, where they should be getting paid 12 to 15, but they can do that because they're illegally in the country. What are your just thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that goes back to, I'm not going to advocate for illegal aliens to get minimum wage. They shouldn't be here. I will advocate for Americans to have those jobs at the prevailing wage, commensurate with the opportunity. I definitely believe that there need to be penalties, including potentially personal liability for the hiring of illegal aliens. Again, this goes back to, did you run an I-9? Did you accept that social security number? Because the litmus is that the document appears to be valid. So that's why I say the onus, I think we need to place both on the company to actually use E-Verify, but also on Social Security and DHS to notify an American if their information is their Social Security number, because they all have our Social Security numbers, right? Let's not act like they don't, and they know who it belongs to. Right. So we need to notify that person so that can be addressed. In one of the bits of legislation that I've been drafting, it's called the Identity Protection, Integrity and Protection Act. It does just that, is put some onus on DHS and Social Security Administration in order for them to notify and to develop a system to sort of tier the levels of concern, right? If you see that a social security number is being used in 3 different states, now that person ain't working in New York, Arizona, right, and Utah. Like, that's not happening. So that's a reasonable suspicion. So then you need to investigate, and then you need to notify the person when there's a reasonable suspicion that their information may have been compromised. And there needs to be some way for them to write off, perhaps on their taxes or whatever, because I would love to get rid of taxation as much as possible for them, enrolling in identity theft protection and those sorts of things, since we've let it lax for so very long.
What is your stance on the wall being completed?
The border wall has been required by law since 2005. The border wall absolutely needs to be completed, and there need to be penalties for the individuals and or others who participate in its destruction in terms of cutting a hole in it and all of that kind of stuff. Easy peasy.
Okay. I just threw that in as a quick question, but I do have another
question. It's a big
question.
one. It's a controversial one.
No, I support the wall. I've been to many countries. I've been to over 40 countries, and even, either they have a natural resource like mountains or certain ranges that prevent people. Like, if you're in that country illegally, you deserve to be there. Like, you have,
you run the
climb a mountain to get in there. So you just didn't have to go over a little small river on a boat or walk across and go through a gate. No, you belong there if you got in that way. That's just my opinion about it. Yeah. Well, as it pertains to due process, what minimum safeguards would you require before removal, especially in rapid operations, as we again are trying to deport massive amount of people who are legally in the country?
Yeah, so a reasonable suspicion that you are not a U.S. citizen and proof that you are not a U.S. citizen. So you would need to confirm how you are here and why, right? And so folks who have temporary status and all of that are supposed to carry that documentation with them, because otherwise there's no, and people ain't gonna follow you to your house so you can pull it out, just like American citizens keep their driver's licenses on them, right? Plus their insurance. So that's fair. I would definitely say that before we send someone to a foreign country, including a third country that they don't even know, we need to absolutely confirm their status. I have some reservations about the third country, and here's the tension there. If their homeland won't accept them, does that mean that by default we have to keep them?
No.
Right. And so then you get into this idea of a third country. And then which country is going to accept someone who could be a potential criminal? But if the person has no criminal record or criminal convictions, but they're just here illegally, do we send them to a war-torn country? It gets really, it gets really complicated in terms of thinking what the best way is to do that, because what I don't want is a situation where we're unnecessarily sending people into war-torn countries where they will be harmed. But also, I don't want to have to accept millions of people because their home country won't take them back. And I mean, part of me is like, if you broke into our country, then surely you should be able to break back into your own country, even if they refuse to accept you.
I think another question is what country allowed you to break into our country? Was it Canada? Was it Mexico?
Yeah. And so then it gets to, just like people can hop over our border, can somebody, fly into Canada from overseas and then walk across, so there's, but I do think that countries where there are repeat offenders and we can figure out what that threshold is, there should be some kind of conversation about that. Now, what does that look like? Can we penalize countries for the repeat offenses of their citizens coming into ours? Or what does it look like for them to educate and to develop themselves enough where people don't want to come here? I know that's a stretch, but yeah.
But I know for me, if the country of their origin would not take them back, is to deport them to the last port of them illegally crossing the side of the country. So because if we have evidence that you illegally entered America from Mexico, what did Mexico do to prevent that from happening? Nothing, because the border's been open for years, if not decades. The same way with Canada. Canada border is a little more stronger than Mexico's, but it still happens up there. It's just not as reported. So that would be my policy. If your country do not want to take, ownership and you're originally from that country, then we're going to deport you from your last port of origin, which you illegally entered the country from. That would be
that creates an interesting visual where we're kicking illegal aliens into Mexico. I mean, it used to be where most of the illegal aliens in the country were from Mexico, but now with how
they're from everywhere.
They're from everywhere.
Yeah, they're from Vietnam, China, India, you name it. They're from it.
Yes. I forget the last statistics, but we were well into the hundreds of countries. I think there was maybe one or two that hadn't been represented in terms of the number of people that that Border Patrol had interaction with, which is crazy. So and I'm sorry, there has to be some accountability for those 4 years of the Biden administration. And I don't know if that means jail time for elected officials, but there has to be some accountability for the ways they welcome these people into the nation. So they incentivized and provided aid and comfort to those who broke U.S. immigration law, and they encouraged the breaking of law, all of which are felonies. Right. So we need to do something about that, because we can't have another administration decide that they want to facilitate mass immigration for whatever reasons they're trying to do it, population stabilization, whatever logic they use to justify it. We can't have it. We have at least 10 to 20 million illegal aliens in the country. And I frankly think it's probably more than that. So our grandchildren's children are going to be competing with the children and grandchildren of those folks. We're talking 70 to 100 million new people, infrastructure, from human service infrastructure to physical infrastructure that this is having rippling effects on. So
you don't believe that different entities that are part of the executive branch should be exonerated and exempt from incarceration because of their actions in office?
Not if they break federal law and there are laws against the actions that they took. No, there are no exemptions. I think the 14th Amendment disqualification clause, despite what the Supreme Court said, applies to every elected official in the land. The framers of that were asked specifically, you don't list the president on here, for example. I'm not taking shots at the president, but the law is what it is, right? Right. And the framer said, well, when we say every elected office, an officer, that includes the president as an officer,
Absolutely.
Therefore the president is included.
So the president can't pardon himself.
Well, there are many things that people think can't be done, but the question is, will it be done? The other thing about that is existing law also says that a pardon that is granted in order to avoid prosecution or accountability for breaking laws can be invalidated. It's
By
just
who
people
though?
having the
Supreme Court?
will. Say again?
Who has that authority? The Supreme Court to make that decision?
Well, Congress has and the Senate and the House together have the authority to investigate those types of things, to recommend for impeachment, and also to refer to the Department of Justice for prosecution. So, Congress. I think we forget that the whole federal infrastructure, Congress is the center of that within the three co-equal branches. And here's what I mean. I don't mean it's more important or less important, but every other branch is there to assess. So the executive is there to implement the laws of Congress.
Absolutely.
Right? The Supreme Court is there to assess and determine cases and controversies and the extent to which they align or deviate from the laws of Congress. Congress is there to implement the will of the people and to safeguard the interests of the people and the nation by implementing laws, by investigating, by recommending trade agreements, by doing all this other stuff. And the different houses have different obligations, but it's all about the will of the people, right? Measured by and tempered by the conscientiousness of the decision makers. But Congress is the center of that. The will of the people is the center of that. And we kind of have it flipped where it seems like we've elevated the executive to a level that it's not supposed to be.
I'm surprised you're not a senator yet.
Well, bless your heart. I appreciate that.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Most of the politicians have law degrees, but wow, I'm just blown away by your response and just knowing the law, judiciary branch, legislative branch, executive branch, and their functions. You can talk to some politicians, they don't know what's going on. They're like, yeah, I just want free health care for everybody.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. It's wild. Well, you talk to some citizens and they're not really clear about who their representatives are as well. And our representatives come from us. A lot of politics is based on drive and emotion. Emotion motivates and it animates. But I can do that, right? I can communicate the issue in a way that resonates with people. I'm trying to bring some competence to this thing and a return to a commitment to constitutionality, which I think we've lost in the sort of fiery rhetoric of them doing this and they're doing this, and we've lost the plot. So I'm hoping that my race is one that obviously people resonate with. I'd love to be the next U.S. Senator from the state of Illinois. And there are many people in the state who support me. And I hope that it's an example of how we can elevate the process and anchor it in something more substantive. Okay.
So what's your position on replacing or impeaching DHS leadership? Like, what's your threshold? Like, would it be fireable for incompetence or impeachable for unlawful conduct? What evidence triggers each one of those, like, in your opinion?
I think about the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas, the last DHS secretary under Biden. Okay. I think one of those thresholds is a willful and or negligent fulfillment of the duties of the office, right? You can't justify to me that you thought letting millions of unknown people into the interior of the United States aligned with your job as the Secretary of Homeland Security. Square the circle for me about how letting millions of illegal aliens in facilitated security in the homeland. So I think that's one, is the extent to which you deviate from your call to action. I think the extent to which you participate, facilitate, or provide aid and comfort to those who break laws. I think the extent to which you've engaged in criminal activity by any objective standard, but that's something that Congress would evaluate. I don't think that anyone is above the law. No one, no matter the level.
No one.
We
I mean,
don't
in other
have-
countries, I believe the former South Korean president actually is going to jail.
Mhm. We don't have law and order if there are people here in the nation who can just thumb their nose at it. And I'm not keen on incarcerating people. I think that 20 years in a cell and in an environment of people who've been dehumanized is a long time.
Long time.
So I'm not keen on incarceration, and I don't have a like punish them all in general type mentality. However, there does have to be some accountability for what people have done, and perhaps jail time or other types of consequences are right.
I mean, we do have more law enforcement agencies than any other country in the world, and we still have a lot of quote unquote violent crime. And I think a portion of that violent crime, and people may disagree because it's a very unpopular opinion, when you just dump all these people inside the country. I mean, Americans commit crime, right? We commit some of the most heinous crimes, but we are American and we're in our country committing crimes, but we don't need any help or support committing crimes that from people from other countries.
Right. Yeah.
That's just my stance on that.
Yeah. Every crime by an illegal alien is a preventable crime. I think so. This goes back, I think, to ways that we've lost the plot about what this republic is supposed to be doing. There are ways that we have just turned our backs on historical harms and the present day impact. And we're not talking about 100 years ago. We're talking about stuff that, especially when it comes to Black Americans, stuff that was still happening during the generation of my oldest siblings, right? I'm the youngest in my family, and I was born in 1973. And the last civil rights bill was signed in 1968. That's not hundreds of years ago. That's not generations ago. And so there are also ways that we have prioritized business profit over people. I don't want to create a society that facilitates dependence. However, we do have to have some hard reflections on our culture and how, our grandparents, or even for some of us, our parents, had a nation that really did care about their lives, their outcomes. There's a reason that a man was able to go to work, his wife stay at home, not just because she had to, but because she could, raise children, own a home, own a car in a nice, quiet neighborhood. People knew your name. Neighbors cared about each other. We got to do some hard cultural reflection, and the extent to which our cultural deviation has created unwell, unanchored people. And this whole thing about toxic masculinity and the like needs to be changed as well. I don't know what the rites of passage are for anymore. So it used to be Boy Scouting and stuff like that, even though that organization had its own issues for sure. Like the molestation of children, I think, is a whole health pandemic. But we gotta do some changing. And I think the president and congressional leaders and leaders at all levels play a central role in that.
I would agree with that. Now, speaking to the future Senator of Illinois, what would be oversight tools you will actually, use as a senator to enforce reform? Like, would you support appropriation conditions tied to compliance metrics? Like, again, going back to, body cams, detention standards, compliant timelines. And would you back subpoena-driven oversight if DHS resists? Still kind of leading off from the DHS point.
Gotcha. Yeah. So yes, all the things. I think hearings that are a bunch of yelling, finger pointing, and conversation are performative if they don't also have consequences and conditions, like you said, tied to it. I've been dismayed sometimes to see the disrespect and flippance that witnesses have shown to Congress. I think Congress needs to grow a pair, and they need to be able to swing a stick and hit. I think that there are recommendations and referrals for action that Congress has refused to make. And here's the other part about that. When your campaigns, I'm taking this back to campaign finance and social political politics, is if your donations tether you to people. And when this person is donating to all of these different folks, and this organization or foreign group is donating to all these different folks. There are tethers that tie people's hands, that tie elected officials' hands. And so it's another reason that campaign finance has to happen, because we need elected officials who aren't concerned about losing their race and losing their voice, right, to represent the people who sent them up there, which is a legitimate concern. But yeah, I don't have any major donors. The people who've donated to me are $500, $1,000 donors, $50 donors every month, $25 donors every month, and the like. And so we have to encourage, and I think even force the hand of our elected officials to keep every consequence on the table. And I don't even think most of us know what all those consequences are. And I'm glad you asked that question, because it's a thing that I've been thinking about as I watched the disrespect that Congress has faced. That has to change. And it doesn't change by being nice. It changes by people having consequences.
That's very interesting, because I just want to know, like, how the public receives you, right? When you look at the amount of support that was garnered around Kamala Harris, because, you know, she was labeled as a Black woman, and of course she was Democrat, which unfortunately to this day, majority of Black Americans are, I think, in the 80 percentile still vote Democratically. How does the public take you being a, Black female Republican?
Yeah. I think many conservatives and Republicans are appreciative. Some people have watched my work from Newsweek. People love the way I put the words together and speak about the things. The only thing that triggers conservatives about me is that I do support reparations, because I believe that any American who's been harmed needs to be repaired. As a matter of fact, I think that Americans First is a call for restoration. It's a call to repair the harm that our nation did by placing immigrants above us, by placing the interests of businesses above Americans. So what that looks like differs. And of course, reparation is more nuanced than most people even have the time to get into. That's the only thing that conservatives take exception with for me. And most of them don't even know what reparation is. I think there are many, in my experience, there are many Democrats who did sign my petition. I got most of my signatures from rural, white folks across the state of Illinois, but they're Black Americans and others who signed my petition. Many of them, especially those who lean toward lineage, very excited about my candidacy. I have a lot of support in Chicago. And
how much money you need again?
Well, it's a question. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, it's a question. I can do a lot with $500,000, to be quite honest with you. And I've done a lot with the 18,000 we've raised so far, quite a bit, right? So people are excited. I think some people are scared because they don't know what reparation mean. It's funny, I'll say this. Last night I was on Facebook, and I was invited to join this group, and I saw one of the women in there posted about all the candidates. And she said, I like Denise a lot. She's clearly the best candidate, but people get triggered by her stance on reparations. The reality is the Senate isn't going to take up reparations anytime soon. So what are y'all mad about, essentially? And I have already said that I don't think Congress is going to pass reparatory policy. However, I do believe that there are things that we can do from a fiscally responsible perspective related to minority spending. There are 7 billion minorities in this world. You can fly over here tomorrow from China and be a minority and compete with a legacy Black American for minority spending. I think that's wrong. So I am looking to tackle that kind of thing. And 8 out of 10 conservatives that I talked to in Illinois about that lineage-based investment strategy of correcting how we misappropriate funds for minorities, they agree with that. So there's room to make some things happen. But yeah, people are responding positively, except for those who are very scared about a topic that they're not expert on.
When you said triggered, people on both sides are triggered, right? Whether those who support it are triggered by publicly saying it, and those who don't support, who kind of give a lot of emotional responses, especially on some videos that I refer to reparations. Mm-hmm. But it's funny how when I mention groups that not have gotten reparations, but are still receiving reparations till this day, like the Native Americans. They still receive reparations till this day,
A lot.
as well as survivors of the Holocaust and their descendants are receiving reparations in America. Today, the Obama administration gave millions of dollars in earmark money
I think it was like
to
12.
survivors of and the descendants of Holocaust survivors. And the Holocaust didn't even happen in America. Anytime I bring that up, no one has nothing to say. I'm like, so you are in support of that because silence in some regards is agreement. But when it comes to lineage, foundational Black Americans receiving it, there's an issue.
Yeah. I think we're often the target, and we're often the main conversation of people main conversation with people acting like we ain't in the room, and conversations about our legacy and our lineage and our legislative promises as if we're not experts in those things. So, for example, Brian Babin recently put forth HR 569, which he called the Birthright Citizenship Act of 2025. And my campaign released a press release about that, and how what we need to focus on is clarifying original intent about the 14th Amendment, right? And so I issued some model legislation, the 14th Amendment Clarification of Original Intent Act of 2027. So, it's been an interesting process. It's not over. Early voting starts February 5th, and the election day is St. Patrick's Day. So March 17th, we'll be campaigning hard to make our case to Illinoisans, and we'll see if they make the wise choice and choose Denise to be their U.S. Senator.
Definitely. I wish you all the best in your run. Believe me, I do. We need more people like you in office. And I just want to finish off on the reparation thing. It's not even a question. I just want to make a statement.
Okay.
Because you get some very hyperbolic, deflammatory language, that I receive every now and again. They're very stereotypical. What, you going to buy more jeans so you can droop them down in your pants? Or you going to buy more chrome rims? Yes, we're going to do all of that, and wear gold chains and diamonds, and we're going to look good and shine. But anyway, I digress. I digress, right? What's your stance, or do you believe that illegal / mass immigration hurt the everyday American?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just a belief, but data actually shows it. We've known since 2008. And I reference this all the time, the Civil Rights Commission report about the impacts of mass illegal immigration on Black American job prospects and the like. And in that report, it shows that white men were more affected originally than were Black men. But it also tracks mass immigration, tracks with mass incarceration. Men who have a high school diploma or less, which is most Black men and most white men have a high school diploma or less, are affected by that. And so in addition to that, there are ways in which our educational costs and infrastructure and resource diversion toward ESL and other things, welfare diversion toward the children born here who have wrongly conferred birthright citizenship, so their legal alien parents or their visitor parents get welfare because of their children. There are ways that our physical infrastructure, bridges, roads, all of it, is overburdened. Our healthcare system is overburdened. Our transportation systems are overburdened. And so it affects the average American in many ways. And let's think about the ways in which, again, the children born here with wrongly conferred birthright citizenship and or illegal, the children who were born elsewhere but come over here across the border with their parents will compete with our children for scholarships, for placements in, teams and all the other things, all the resources needed. So I can understand people's desire to be humane and generous, but we don't have to be so pathologically altruistic that our children end up competing with other people for resources that are theirs. And here's the other thing. One of the reasons the legacy Black American community is now the third largest group in the United States is because of mass immigration, and
Absolutely.
Also because of that 1986 amnesty that Reagan gave, that gave people voting rights. And you have people in the Hispanic community and others saying that we who were the economic engine of the nation, the founding Black population, can't do anything without their help or without their support. And if we don't agree with it, you can't have it. Like that is turning this whole thing on its head. So we got to think longer term than just what's happening now and what we feel when we look at other people. We have to think about the conditions that are going to be facing our children and grandchildren.
Last question as it pertains to illegal immigration. Mm-hmm. Can you, if possible, I don't know if you created this yet, provide your, some tenets of your national standard package? Like, what are the uniform rules that should apply across all federal immigration operations, nationwide, in reference to use of force limits, identification requirements, reporting detention conditions, and independent review process when operations result in serious injury or death?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. First of all, I haven't looked at all of those measures, so I'm not sure where the gaps fall. It is quite possible that we have what we need and people are choosing not to use it. One of the things that I think is important is for the Department of Justice to not be captured by the executive branch. They need to be able to make independent judgments on those types of investigations. I will also say that states absolutely have the right to bring charges about use of force. There is no absolute immunity. No one in America should have absolute immunity. Absolute immunity basically means nothing that you do is prosecutable and you're essentially above the law. No one has that. No one ever should. And I will never support such a thing. And so that's a definite condition there. I think those are the things that stand out to me. I think what I can promise is certainly I would love to be on one of the Homeland Security committees, especially the one that looks at border management and processes. And should I be placed on such or such laws be put forth, I will definitely commit to looking at those gaps and finding if there are places that need to be strengthened so that the rule of law prevails and that there is accountability for when people deviate from their commitment, I think their obligation to do least harm.
Now, for people who live in and outside of Illinois, take for somebody like myself, live outside of Illinois, how do I go about supporting you? Because I didn't like what she said. She sounds real good. So I want us to support Dr. Pamela Denise Long. How do I go about doing that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So right now, of course, what is really important is getting the votes. And there are a few ways that people can support that. If you're outside of Illinois, do you know someone in Illinois? Can you give them a call and phone bank your network and tell those people to vote for me, Pamela Denise Long, on the Republican primary ballot? So that's the important thing. I did run as a Republican because I am one. And so you'll have to pull the Republican primary ballot to vote for me for the March 17th election. If I don't make it past the primary, then I'm not going to be on the ballot for November. And then the other thing is anyone who's a U.S. citizen can donate. I see you have on my website, which is longforsenate2026.com. That's LONGFOR Senate2026.com. There's a green button at the top that says donate. There's an area in the middle of the page that says donate. You can click one of those amounts. It's going to take you to a secure, well-vetted, often used website where you can contribute on a one-time basis. You can contribute up to $3,500 to the campaign. I would so appreciate that. Or you contribute on a monthly basis to sustain the campaign. All of those funds are dedicated to connecting with voters, whether that be buying elections or materials, campaign materials like flyers, yard signs, and the like, and or travel that I have to do because we're a large state with 102 counties. So you can donate, you can tell people to vote for me, you can follow me on social media, including on Instagram, on Twitter X, on Facebook at Long for Senate 2026. If you put that in the search bar on any of those platforms, you'll find it. You'll also find my personal Twitter page, which has about 12,000 followers on there. And so you can amplify my message. You can share my message on your page to your network. You can share my posts on social media with people who are not online so that they can learn about me and support me as well. So I'd say if you like something that you heard, I would say reach out to 20 of your friends via text on a regular basis and tell them to support this woman because we have only 6 weeks, a little less than 6 weeks at this point to convert this into a win. And I would appreciate all the support I can get. We're also phone banking. You can phone bank for me anywhere in the United States using a secure line where you would just call, not using your phone number. It would never show your phone number, and connect with voters to just say, hey, are you planning to vote for in the U.S. Senate race for March 17th. And if you are, I'd encourage you to look at Pamela Denise Long. And if you're not planning to vote, here's a reason for you to get out and make it happen.
And I will also say, just looking at your donation website here, is that, ladies and gentlemen, you can donate $1 a month. You can donate how much you want in the support of this beautiful sister running for office, who's very intelligent, who will be good for the people, good for America, good for the state of Illinois. But on that federal level, who knows the amount of, influence she may have across the nation. So again, we can't just look at this Illinois base. We have to look at this nation base, in my opinion. Are there any other, and by the way, I'm gonna have all the links in the description of this video. Do you have any last comments that you would like to make?
Yeah, so I'm going to push you on that one a little bit, Blacklogic. I will say that I'm in a race against someone who gave themselves $2 million, right? I would say I need you to come up with at least 25, right? So, skip out on the 5 guys for one visit or whatever and send it to a sister so I can represent us. I will have enormous ability to influence policy for every Illinoisan, downstate, upstate, rural, urban, suburban, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. And I am anchored in and committed to the rule of law and constitutionality for every Illinoisan. And so, yeah, check me out. If you like what you see and hear, reach out to a system. The email for the campaign is on there. The phone number for the campaign is on the website as well. And I appreciate the conversation as always, Blacklogic. You're an amazing interviewer.
Thank you so much. And one last question, because it's something you said. Have you met with Chicago Flips Red as well as Chicago Red?
So I know all of those folks. I have met with Chicago Flips Red. They invited me to an interview. They were at my community meeting that was held for me with the Black American community in Chicago. There are several flips, but I'm certainly familiar with P. Ray. And then I'm also familiar with Mark Carter, who has been heavily involved with sort of shaking people and waking people up as well. So all of those folks are familiar with me too. And, I told people the other day, I hadn't heard of the Flips Red folks when I wrote my article that it's time for Black America to break up with the Democratic Party. But I am really thrilled to see that call to action to look at all parties and tell everyone what it is that fair representation looks like to you. I'm glad to see it happening. And I believe I'm the best candidate to represent all of Illinois, and certainly representing the interest of Black Chicago.
I agree. I believe you're the best candidate as well. Well, thank you so much, future Senator Dr. Long. I do appreciate your time. And
thank you.
Thank you.